They used to whisper about humans, they way you speak of ghosts, myths from a war long forgotten, names buried beneath ash and propaganda. Aliens spoke of the earthborn like they were monsters born from fire and violence who burned across the stars in an age where the galaxy still bled. Then they vanished, some said wiped out. Others believed they simply turned on each other, but nobody really knew until now. The dominion of Calrith, an empire of 17 star systems, 3 trillion beings, and a navy that darkened suns made a mistake. They stumbled across a dying planet orbiting a collapsed red dwarf. On it, buried under centuries of silence and sand, was a broken human war satellite, scarred, half fried, but alive. They took it, studied it, mocked it, and unknowingly woke it up. It sent a signal, a single pulse across the void, and something answered. No one understood what it meant at first, not until the sky split open over Cal Prime, not until the stars bled black with vessels they'd never seen before, ships shaped like daggers, sleek as blades, flying in eerie silence, not until the first orbital defense ring went dark, not until fire rained from above and their fleet screamed through the comms. In panic, I watched from orbit. I wasn't supposed to be there, just a salvage runner, ex-military. I was cleared to monitor junk routes and collect debris for the Dominion. Good enough to fly, not important enough to matter, but I mattered now because I knew what those ships were. I'd heard the stories my grandfather told me, tales when I was a kid, drunk on cheap synth ale and grief. Humans ain't gone, he used to say. They just got tired of saving everyone. I never believed him, no one did, but standing there watching those long-forgotten vessels descend through fire like angels of death, I knew the old bastard was right. They didn't come in peace, they came because someone poked the wrong corpse. Cal's fleet responded fast, but it didn't matter. Their cruisers were ripped apart before they even locked targets. Their capital ships tried to run, only one made it to hyperspace before something caught it mid-jump and tore it in half like paper. The sound, I still hear it in my sleep. Metal screaming, men begging, static. Then silence. The Dominion issued no official statement. How could they? Their flagship exploded on live broadcast across 6 systems. Billions watched as one of the most feared war machines in the galaxy crumbled like it was made of sand. No war declaration, no posturing, no calls for diplomacy, just one voice patched into every Dominion frequency, cold and male. You remembered us, we remember you. I still don't know who sent it. Maybe it was symbolic, maybe it was real, but whatever these humans were, whoever was left of them, they were nothing like the scared, scattered species from the old archives. This was revenge. This was dominance, and it was just the beginning. On the surface below, cities burned, not all of them were attacked. That's what made it worse. The humans didn't bomb everything, they chose targets, precision strikes, government centers, military hubs, communications arrays. They left hospitals untouched. They spared orphan wards. It was a message: we are not monsters, we're just better than you. I saw a human drop pod land less than 3 km from my ship. Tall figure, black armor, no insignia, no flags. He looked right at my cameras. He saw me and he let me live. Why? I didn't know then, but I was going to find out. I couldn't sleep, not because of the shock, not even because of the screams echoing over the emergency bands. I'd heard war, I'd seen ships torn open with people still inside. I knew what it meant to lose, to watch your leaders panic like rats and your comrades vanish into fire. No, this was different. This wasn't war. This was judgment. I stood at the viewport of my salvage hauler watching the blackened sky, the orbital debris from Calreth's defense fleet still floated around like glitter, made of corpses, shattered hulls, twisted girders, and escape pods that hadn't gotten far enough. Smoke trailed through the upper atmosphere, the planet below flickering with distant fires like it was blinking for help. And then there was him, the armored human who stepped out of that drop pod and looked right at me. I replayed the feed over and over. Zoomed, enhanced, the bastard stood like a statue, staring up at the exact camera I was using. He knew. No insignia, no weapons drawn, but that stillness, that heavy coiled control, I recognized it. You didn't get that kind of calm unless you were a killer used to surviving things others didn't. I'd seen men like that before, once back when I was enlisted, before I got thrown out for disobeying orders and punching a ranking officer who let a colony burn because it wasn't strategic. The Dominion had rules I didn't follow. All of them. That got me demoted to garbage duty, floating alone in the black, picking apart dead ships and selling off their metal guts. I should have died out here, a quiet end. Useless. Instead, I was staring through the glass at something impossible. Commander, we've lost orbital uplink to Calreth. Command, the AI chirped in my cabin. Local government structure has been compromised. Multiple infrastructure collapses detected across all 3 major continents. Civilian broadcasts report mass evacuations. I didn't answer. I just sat in the pilot's seat watching the chaos. Smoke choked the skies. Ships were still falling, twisted and flaming like metallic meteors trailing black blood. And yet they weren't hitting civilian zones. The humans were aiming around them. They're sending a message, I muttered. Please clarify, the AI said. They could have turned this whole damn planet into glass, but they didn't. They only hit the places that mattered, the fleet, command, communication towers, energy hubs. It's not just an attack. It's surgical vengeance with discipline. Strategic non-genocidal warfare. Confirmed. I smirked bitter. That's not war, AI. That's personal. I didn't know what to do. Contact the Dominion. There was no one left to talk to. Their feeds were either jammed or filled with propaganda that sounded more desperate than defiant. Remain calm. Situation under control. Temporary disruption. All lies. What do you say when the boogeyman turns out to be real? I shut down the long-range comms. No one was answering anyway. Then I powered up the long-range scanners. If there were more human ships, more drop pods, I'd find them. I needed to know what the hell was coming next. Not out of curiosity, out of survival. But before I could activate the sweep, the power cut, total blackout. My heart dropped. Every emergency light died. Engines, the life support, even the A went silent, just the hum of space around me. That's when I knew something was inside the ship, not a malfunction, an intrusion. I reached under the console, pulling the old sidearm I kept taped there. Dominion issue, energy charged, illegal for a civilian. No one cared out here. The hallway was pitch black, silent. I Moved slow, heel to toe, breathing. Light gun raised. My ship wasn't big. Just 3 rooms, cockpit, storage bay. Living quarters, I cleared the first. 2, stepping through broken light beams. From the backup solar panels, then I heard it clunk near the airlock. Someone or something had come aboard. I pressed myself against the wall, inching forward. No footsteps, no voices, just a single mechanical hiss, the sound of decompression. The airlock had been breached, clean and silent. Then I saw the shadow. It moved like smoke, a figure stepping out of the dark in armor black as midnight, matte, finished. No reflection, no sound. The same shape I saw outside, the same man. He looked taller in person, broader, but it wasn't the armor that scared me. It was the stillness, like he could end me in a heartbeat and didn't care enough to try. Put the weapon down, he said, voice smooth, deep, human. I didn't lower it. You first. He tilted his head like he was studying me. Then he said something that froze me cold. Exurant Tavern read. Dishonorably discharged. 47 confirmed. Kills in the Arctis incursion. Special Forces 9th Ghost Unit. You went rogue in 82 after refusing a withdrawal order. You burned an entire command center for letting a civilian colony get wiped. I didn't say a word, couldn't, no one had that intel anymore. That file was sealed, buried, forgotten. Even I didn't talk about it. Why are you here? I asked. He didn't blink. We came back. You're human, he nodded once. Not the kind you remember, but yeah, human. Enough. What do you want from me? He looked around the cabin. You're not with them anymore. You haven't been for years. You know their corruption. You know how many systems they've broken, how many species they've enslaved behind their order. You saw it, didn't you, back then? I didn't answer. Good, he said, because you're coming with me. I raised my gun higher. The hell I am. He took 1 step forward. I didn't even see his hand move. 1 second the gun was in my grip. The next it was on the floor and my wrist felt like it had been crushed by a grav loader. He didn't even break a sweat. I said, you're coming, he repeated. I should have fought, should have run, but deep down I think I wanted to go. Because as terrifying as he was, I saw something behind that visor. Not rage, not hatred, purpose. The kind I lost a long time ago. He led me outside past my own airlock into a black dropship I hadn't even noticed. Latched onto my hull, it was seamless. Invisible, like a ghost ship with no engines, no markings. Inside were 2 more humans, 1 male, 1 female, both armored. Neither said a word. The ship took off, soundless, like a shadow gliding into space. As we ascended, I looked back at Calrith Prime, the city I used to call home. Looked like a dying ember. But for the first time in years I felt something other than despair, not hope. Not yet, but maybe the beginning of something different. Maybe a reckoning. The human dropship moved like it was cutting through the fabric of space. Itself smooth, silent, without the usual hum or vibration I'd grown used to. On Dominion vessels, my stomach didn't churn, my ears didn't pop. It was like the air inside obeyed a different set of physics, and I was just along for the ride. No one spoke, not the woman sitting across from me, arms crossed, helmet off, revealing short silver flecked hair and eyes sharp as razors, not the tall male soldier beside her, face completely hidden behind a sealed visor. And definitely not the one who brought Me here, the one who disarmed me in a blink, the one who knew everything about my past. I sat in silence, trying not to look out the small viewport. Calrith Prime had disappeared behind us. In its place was the scattered wreckage of the Dominion's pride, burnt out. Defense satellites, crippled destroyers, spinning dead in orbit, chunks of metal, slowly drifting away from shattered orbital platforms, all of it floating. Like bones in space, it should have felt like justice, but all I felt was cold. "You got a name?" I finally asked. Armored soldier across from me didn't move. Then after a pause he said, "We don't use names anymore, not in the fleet." "The fleet?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "You mean the damn ghost fleet? That just wiped out an entire star defense in an hour." A small smirk tugged at the corner of the woman's mouth. He leaned forward. His voice was calm but heavy. "You're here because you're one of the few who saw through the Dominion's lies early. You didn't just rebel, you chose conscience over orders. That matters. That got me thrown out in case you forgot." "Exactly," he said. "That's why you're still alive." I didn't respond. I wasn't ready to admit it, but part of me had always wished someone would tell me I did the right thing that day, torching a command center to stop a withdrawal order that would have condemned 60,000 colonists. Instead, I got court-martialed, blacklisted, and dumped in the outer ring with a busted hauler and a dishonorable discharge. Now these people were treating me like I was some kind of seed they'd been waiting to harvest. "We're approaching the fleet," the woman finally said, tapping a console beside her. The stars outside shifted. 1 second, it was just the void. The next, a ripple passed through the black like the space ahead had been hiding something massive, and now it was showing itself. And then I saw it, a fleet, no, a relic, dozens of ships, none like the ones I remembered from my service years. These were older pre-Dominion designs, angular and matte black, shaped for speed and stealth, but there was nothing clunky about them. These weren't just warships. These were predators, sleek, low, silent. The Dominion ships were built to intimidate. These were built to disappear and then end you before you even knew they were there. At the center of the fleet, larger than anything I'd seen before, was a vessel shaped like a crescent blade, its hull glinting with a dull silver sheen that looked more like scar tissue than metal. It had no lights, no insignia, no ports, just a massive silent presence in the dark. "What is that?" I breathed. The armored man replied quietly, "The Warden. It's our flagship in our last home." The dropship slipped through the fleet without challenge, no beacons, no hails, just silent tracking, like they all knew we were coming. As we approached the Warden, the hull opened with a seamless split, revealing a hangar bay lit only by soft crimson lines across the floor. The moment we landed, the entire bay came alive with movement, men and women in that same black armor, moving with practiced precision, weapons slung but ready, faces grim and focused, no laughter, no chatter, just professionals, warriors, and all of them human. The Dominion said humans were extinct outside the border colonies, that they destroyed themselves. That's what they taught us. That's what the Holovids showed. Lies. These people weren't just survivors, they were preparing for something, for this end. I just walked into the heart of it. They took me through metal corridors lined with ancient Earth banners, symbols I hadn't seen in decades. Old Terran flags, the United Earth Coalition insignias, patches from regiments I thought were long gone. Everything preserved like a shrine to a forgotten empire. Eventually, we reached a chamber. Long dark room filled with data. Hollows, maps, war simulations. One wall projected a 3D model of the Dominion. Territories, red markers blinking across. Planets I knew. Kreth was already marked cleared. Standing at the center of it all was a tall man with a bare face, silver hair, cropped short and eyes colder than any vacuum. He turned as we entered. "You're the salvager," he said flatly. I recognized that voice, the one from the broadcast. "You're the one who said, 'We remember.'" "You," I said slowly. He nodded once. "Admiral Rake, commander of the human remnant fleet." Remnant. He stepped closer. After the collapse, most humans died, billions. Some joined the Dominion, some were enslaved, the rest vanished. We didn't. We hid, we evolved, we rebuilt, and now you're back. "No," he said, "now they pay." I looked at the map, more systems marked in red, more targets lined up. "You're going to burn them all." "No, we don't. Kill the innocent, but we'll remove the root of the disease systematically. Precisely, completely." "And what do you want from me, Admiral?" Rake turned to face me fully. "We need someone who understands the Dominion from the inside, someone trained by them, abandoned by them, someone who still remembers how to fight." I snorted. "I'm 45. I haven't held rank in a decade. I'm a hauler pilot now, not a soldier." "Your record speaks for itself," he said. "You're exactly what we need, and if I say no," he stared at me for a long moment, "then we erase your memory, leave you on a neutral world, and never speak again. No harm, no threat. You'd be free." But I saw it in his eyes. He didn't want me to say no. I turned to the map again. Calrith flickered. Below it, a label now. Read, subjugation neutralized. For years I'd lived knowing I was right. When I broke ranks, that I saw what others refused to, and for years it cost me everything: career, home, purpose. Now these people were offering it all back, not with pity, with vengeance. I clenched my jaw. "All right," I said. "Where do I start?" They gave me a room, clean, simple. Nothing like the cramped quarters I was used to in Dominion vessels. No mirrors, no windows, just a bed, a basin, and a screen with nothing but blank prompts. It wasn't meant for comfort. It was meant to remind you this place wasn't home. This was war. My new uniform arrived a few hours later, black, armored, light as a whisper, but stronger than anything I'd ever worn. No insignia, no tags, just a small etched number over the heart, 47. They remembered my record. They wanted me to wear it like a badge. Or maybe a warning. I stood in front of the screen, suited up, staring at my reflection in the dark metal wall. The man staring back didn't look like a salvager anymore. He looked like a ghost, and maybe that was fitting. Because if I stepped back into this war, there was no coming out clean. A soft chime rang from the door. "Come in," I said, knowing I didn't have a choice anyway. It slid open to reveal the woman from the dropship, short, cropped hair, sharp gaze, movements like a hawk in low gravity. She stepped in without ceremony. "Call signs, Mara," she said. "Admiral says you're ready. Time to prove it." "Prove what?" I asked. "That you're still useful." "Charming." She tossed a data pad on the bed. "Recon mission. Low risk, mostly intel retrieval. You'll be embedded with my unit for now. If you're dead, wait. I'll tell Rake to jettison you from the Nearest airlock. Sounds like a healthy work environment. She didn't smile. I picked up the pad and scrolled through. The briefing. The target was a Dominion refueling station on a moon called Jarus. 4, about 6 jumps from Calrith Prime. Nothing fancy, just a pit stop for long haul carriers, but it also housed a listening post tucked beneath the surface, a hidden relay off-grid. Dominion scouts sent encrypted movement reports. It's not just a fuel stop, I muttered. It's a blind spot sensor hub. Mara nodded. Exactly, they've used it to track minor resistance cells for years. Nobody's hit it because nobody knew it existed until now. And you want it wiped. She looked me in the eye. We want the data, not the bodies. That surprised me. I expected them to want vengeance, scorched earth, screaming fire, but they were still being careful, targeted, calculated. I'll prep, I said. Mara didn't wait. She just walked out. We launched 6 hours later, 2 ships. Silent entry. No Dominion chatter detected. I sat behind Mara in the drop bay, my hands tightening around the weapon they'd given me, sleek, heavy, deadly like everything else here. Ever miss it? I asked her over the comm. Miss what? The galaxy. Before this, before everything, was a graveyard. She didn't turn around. The galaxy was always a graveyard. You just didn't see the bodies yet. Cold but not wrong. We landed on the dark side of Jarus 4. Cloaked by its natural shadow, the terrain was jagged, icy, and scattered with old mining scars. Dominion architecture stuck out like bones. Rigid, sharp, functional. The refueling station pulsed with light. Every few seconds, a heartbeat of artificial life. 2 towers, 4 guard drones, and a buried entrance leading down. Simple, quiet, too quiet. We moved in squads. 6 of us fanned out, communicating in low bend whispers. I had point because I'd been in enough Dominion outposts to know their design patterns. If nothing had changed, the security panel would be 10 m west of the main door, buried behind a false wall. I found it, cracked it open. Still the same code structure. Arrogance kept the Dominion lazy. The door slid open with a whisper. We moved fast. Inside, the base was dead silent. No guards, no staff. Just flickering lights and a distant hum. Weird, one of the soldiers muttered. Where the hell is everyone? I don't like it. Mara said, sweep fast. We cleared the upper levels without resistance. Fuel tanks intact, storage locked, no signs of a fight. Nothing looked touched. Until we hit the 3rd level. That's when we found them. 7 Dominion soldiers, bodies stiff, still in uniform, all sitting at a table, cards in hand, drinks spilled, eyes wide open. Dead but no wounds. What the hell? I whispered. Mara knelt by one of the bodies. No burns, no blood, internal failure. I pointed to the deck. A single shard of black metal lay beneath one of the chairs. Thin, sharp, not Dominion. Make human tech. Silent insertion. Neural disruptor, I said. Takes the brain offline without touching anything else. No panic, no alarm, just gone. Mara looked at me. One of ours. I shook my head. You tell me. She tapped her command. This is Mara. We've got unknown interference at Jarus 4. Dominion unit neutralized with remnant-style tech, but we weren't the first ones here. Admiral Rake's voice came through after a pause. You're not alone on that moon. We moved deeper. The relay room was below, buried under 6 FT of reinforced alloy, but when we reached the corridor, the door was already open. Inside, the System had been wiped, not destroyed. Cleaned like someone had extracted everything and left without a trace. Mara's jaw clenched. Someone's running parallel ops without telling us that wasn't just risky. It was stupid. Internal fractures meant death. We couldn't afford splinter cells right now. Could be a rogue, I said, or someone who doesn't like how Rake's doing things. Then we find them. Before she could give orders, a proximity alert blared in our ears. Incoming ship. Dominion, make fast. Approach evac now. Mara barked. We sprinted for the surface. The moment we broke into the open, the sky above flashed with burning white light. 2 Dominion fighters dropping into atmosphere, weapons hot. I dove behind rock formation as a plasma bolt lit up the ice where I'd been standing. The rest of the team scattered, returning fire in tight, disciplined bursts. The first fighter screamed overhead, sleek, predatory, loaded with anti-personnel ordnance. We weren't equipped for an air battle. We're not going to make it out unless we call for air cover. One of the soldiers yelled. No time, Mara shouted back. I gritted my teeth, pulled out the beacon clipped to my belt. The emergency signal keyed to the warden. They told me not to use it unless the mission was compromised. Well, it was. Now I hit the switch. The beacon pulsed once, then the sky ripped open. A single remnant fighter dropped from orbit like a hammer. No sound, no buildup, just sudden surgical presence. One blast, one shot. The first Dominion fighter vaporized mid-turn like someone had erased it from existence. The second tried to bank, too late. The remnant fighter didn't miss. Silence returned. The team stood slowly, blinking in disbelief. Mara looked at me. You called that in? Yeah, I said, panting. You're welcome. She stared a second longer, then nodded. Let's go, we've got more problems than we thought. Back aboard the warden, the debrief was brief. The admiral wasn't angry. He was focused. Someone's hitting targets. Before we do, he said, same tactics, same gear, but no authorization. That puts every op at risk. Mara stood beside me, arms crossed. You think we've got a defector? Rake shook his head. No, I think we've got a splinter faction. A second remnant, a ghost of a ghost. I felt something in my chest twist. Not fear, not yet, but a deep growing sense that the war I just joined was even more fractured than I thought, and whoever was out there, they weren't just fighting the Dominion. They might be ready to fight us too. It was a strange thing, realizing the enemy might look just like you. We spent years fearing aliens, despising the Dominion, watching humanity get crushed under boots, wearing different skin. Then the ghosts showed up, humans we thought long dead, and for a brief moment it felt like the war was simple again, us versus them. But it never stays simple. War never does. I stood in the observation deck of the warden, watching the fleet drift through the void like a pack of wolves, too disciplined to snarl. Behind me the room was quiet. Dim lights, low hums, long shadows. No music, no laughter, just silence and strategy. Then I heard footsteps, precise, familiar. Mara. You're late, I said without turning. I'm not here to talk, she said. Her voice had that edge again, tight, controlled but not cold. Not anymore. I glanced back. She leaned against the doorframe, arms folded. Her black armor was scratched from the jar mission, but she hadn't bothered to clean it either. A statement or a warning? Another hit? I asked. She nodded once. Same pattern Remote outpost on Ferris Belt, cleared. Before we arrived, 0 casualties, data. Wiped, I exhaled, that made 3. Calreth shadow operations, then Jarrus. Now Ferris, they're not trying to stop us, I said, they're moving in tandem. That's the problem, she said, if they were just rebels, we'd put them down. But this is coordinated. I turned back to the stars. So, what happens when we run into them? Face to face, she didn't answer, not because she didn't have one, because she didn't like it. Rake wants to speak with you, she said. Finally. Why me? Because you've got experience dealing with unpredictable units. That was a long time ago. She stepped forward. You're still carrying the weight. That means it still matters. I wasn't sure if it was respect or pity. Either way, I followed her to the command deck. Admiral Rake stood in front of a live feed, blurry, static written, but unmistakable, a human face masked, speaking in broken, distorted audio. We do not recognize your command, the voice said. The remnant is fractured. We are the fulcrum. You are not our future. Rake shut off the transmission and turned to me. Their former remnant, he said, splintered off 3 years ago. During the Kashan uprising, claimed we were becoming too soft. Soft, I asked. You've been systematically dismantling Dominion systems and still sparing civilians. Rake said, still offering surrender. That didn't sit well with the fulcrum. Mara explained, they believe in total reclamation. If it flew a Dominion flag, it burns. I remembered the corpses at that card table, no wounds, no struggle, no mercy. So what do you need from me? Contact. Rake said, they're not open to diplomacy, but they might listen to a soldier who isn't wearing our uniform. You want me to pretend to defect? I want you to find them, he said, voice low. Get inside, learn what you can. Then decide if they're a threat or an asset, and if they're both. Rake's eyes locked on mine. Then you do what you were trained to do. I looked at Mara. She didn't speak, but she nodded once. I was being asked to walk into a hive of broken soldiers and convince them I didn't belong to anyone. I'd done worse. We staged it well, a fake argument with Mara, a falsified reprimand report, transfer order that conveniently disappeared from the fleet's logs. I took a small scout ship, solo piloted, with limited fuel and only basic weapons, a broken soldier with nowhere to go. Then we sent out the signal. It didn't take long. 3 days later, a black ship intercepted me near the Yarn Rift, a dead zone full of magnetic storms and wreckage from an old Dominion massacre. Perfect place to hide, perfect place to vanish. They came in fast, no hails, no warnings, just a pulse beam that disabled my nav system and a docking clamp that nearly ripped my hull open. I sat still in the cockpit, hands up, no weapons drawn. The airlock hissed open, and they entered, 3 of them armored, head to toe, matte gray instead of black, less elegant, more brutal. One of them stepped forward, visor down, rifle raised. Name, he said. Tavern Red. I replied, Examinian Exemnant. Just trying not to die out here. What do you want? I gave the only answer I knew would work. Revenge. He didn't move for several seconds. Then he said, welcome to Fulcrum. Their base was carved inside the husk of an old colony freighter, the Righteous End, abandoned decades ago, ripped half during a supply war. They'd rebuilt it with scrap and stolen parts. No beauty, no design, just function. Everything in the Fulcrum was raw, exposed, angry. They lived in steel corridors and makeshift bunk rooms. Power flickered. Voices were raised, orders barked. I saw a man punch another over a ration bar. No one stopped them. This wasn't discipline, it was fury wearing armor. Their leader wasn't some masked zealot. She was an old war vet named Commander. LRA, face burned on one side, eyes like granite. When she spoke, the entire Meshal went dead silent. "You were with Rake once," she said to me. I nodded briefly. "You left, didn't like his rules." "Neither did we." She stared at me like she was trying to see through my skin. "What do you want?" Tavan read everything they took from us. I said, "No more mercy, no more calculated strikes. If it's Dominion, it dies." She smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the kind you give before pulling a trigger. "You'll fit right in." The next 3 days were a blur of patrols, orientation, and watching my back. They didn't trust me yet. I didn't expect them to. Fulcrum wasn't built on trust, it was built on shared hate. But even in their chaos, they were effective. They hit targets harder and faster than remnant units. They had spies inside the Dominion, inside the remnant even. They knew which stations to strike, which supply routes to sabotage, which officials to assassinate. They didn't ask if it was necessary, they just did it. Part of me respected the efficiency. Another part started to worry, because if Rake was planning a war to reshape the galaxy, Fulcrum was planning one to burn it all down and let the ashes decide what rose next. And if they got stronger than the remnant, there'd be no war left to fight, only aftermath. On the 4th night, I sent the signal. One flash, short burst, buried in a background transmission from a salvaged Dominion beacon. The warden would know I was alive, embedded, watching, but I didn't tell them everything, because something was happening inside me, a voice I hadn't heard in years. Voice that asked, what if they're right? What if the remnant's mercy was weakness? What if the only way to win was to make sure there was nothing left to rise against us again? And what if that meant choosing between two evils? I wasn't sure anymore which one I'd sworn loyalty to. I didn't sleep much during my first week with Fulcrum. No one really did. They weren't like the remnant. No rotating shifts, no structured briefings, no scheduled downtime. They moved like insurgents, operated like ghosts, and lived like they were already dead. There was no pretending out here. I stayed alert, played the part. Angry ex-remnant, the broken soldier. Tired of compromise, that was the face I showed them, but underneath I was watching every movement, every command, every reaction, trying to understand who they were and what they really wanted. The answer came faster than I expected. Commander Lyra summoned me to the ops. On the 7th day, the lights were dim. A single hollow map floated in the center, bright red dots blinking over a small moon in the Torrid cluster. I recognized it immediately. Tyne outpost, I said. LRA nodded. Dominion aligned civilian colony. Front-facing relay station. They house a covert sensor grid that tracks remnant movement, unofficial of course. High value, I muttered. High risk, she corrected, but we're not going after the grid. I frowned. Then what's the target? She zoomed in. A small cluster of buildings, a dome near the edge of the civilian zone. This is their Ministry of Compliance, the local office for cultural retraining. A chill ran down my spine. The ministry was one of the Dominion's ugliest. Branches, it didn't just issue laws, it broke people, turned them into model citizens through drugs, shock, correction, memory manipulation. Most of the galaxy pretended it didn't exist. How many inside? I asked. 23 staff, she said. All Dominion, all complicit. We've did 12 who personally oversaw indoctrinations, the others supported it. What about civilians? I asked. Family quarters, nearby infrastructure. They'll be warned, LRA said, but not evacuated. I narrowed my eyes. Why not? Because we don't evacuate for traitors, she replied. Coldly, they chose to live there. They chose to look away. I stared at the map. This wasn't a clean strike. It wasn't even tactical. This was personal. You want to make an example? I said. She nodded. They need to understand there are consequences now. We launched that same night, 3 drop teams. I was assigned to Alpha Squad. Frontline breach. They gave me a silencer pistol, 2 grenades, and a blade. Fulcrum didn't believe in long range engagements when they could make a message up close. The flight in was quiet. I sat across from Rix, a beast of a man with augments on both arms and scars running from his scalp to his chin. He didn't blink much, didn't talk either. Beside him was Nara, demolitions expert, who smiled too easily and took joy in describing how she liked feeling a building fall. They were killers, unapologetic, proud, and I was beginning to realize that I wasn't just in over my head. I might have been surrounded by exactly the kind of people I used to hunt. The dropship cloaked before entering Tyne's airspace. We landed in a rocky gorge 2 clicks from the colony. No sensors pinged, no alarm tripped. They didn't expect anyone to come. That made it worse. We moved quickly through the canyon, sticking to shadow. I remembered the old drills, low profile, triggered discipline, staggered formations. Fulcrum didn't follow those. They moved like wolves, not soldiers. Rix was first in. He took out the outer sentry post with a single punch. No gunfire, just a brutal crunch and a silent fall. Then we breached the outer wall of the ministry. I hacked the panel while Nara rigged the far door with thermite just in case. Inside was quiet, too quiet. We split into teams, Rix and I on the left hall, inoperative Civ on the right. The corridor smelled sterile, lit panels flickered overhead. Then the scream started, short, sharp. I turned a corner and saw a guard slumped against the wall, eyes wide, throat cut clean. Not ours. We moved deeper. More bodies, staff, no weapons, just office drones in Dominion suits, every one of them executed with a single shot to the head or a slit across the neck. I heard Nara's laugh echo down the hall. She's enjoying this, I muttered. Rix didn't answer. He just kicked open the next door. Inside was a holding room, 5 civilians chained, weak, trembling. They looked barely fed. 2 were children. My chest clenched. Don't move, I said softly, raising my hands. The woman, mid-30s, gaunt, sunken eyes, whimpered, shielding the kids. We're not here to hurt you, I said. Rick stepped forward, staring at the woman like she was part of the wall. Dominion citizen, she nodded quickly. Then you're guilty, he said coldly. I blocked him. They're prisoners. Doesn't matter. The hell it doesn't, I snapped. He raised a brow. Go in soft. Red. I stared him down. They're not soldiers, they're victims. He leaned in close. You think the remnants is going to pat You on the back for this mercy act, you. Think Rake wouldn't burn them himself? He'd give them a choice, I growled. Rick said nothing, just backed up and let me pass. I knelt by the woman and started unchaining them. You'll have to run, I whispered. Take the north tunnel. Head to the outer ridge. Don't stop, she nodded, tears streaming down her face. Go, they fled. Rix didn't stop them. But I knew he wanted to. The rest of the outpost was purged. They planted explosives on the ministries, records room, and burned the files. Everything Dominion had ever documented. Names, conversion rates, child transfers gone. In another world, that might have been justice. But then we found the broadcast room, a chamber where they sent public correction videos to neighboring colonies and lit it up before we even checked who was inside. 2 techs unarmed, one died instantly. The other burned. I stood there frozen, smelling flesh and hearing that giddy laugh again. You feel that? Nah, ask me, that's what freedom smells like. It smelled like death. We exfiltrated without resistance. As the ministry burned behind us, I sent a silent burst through my personal comm. One flash, not to Rake tomorrow. The message was simple. They're out of control. She wouldn't respond, but she'd see it and she'd know I was still inside the storm, but for how long? I didn't know if I could keep pretending. Because every mission like this pushed me closer to a line I'd sworn never to cross again, and part of me feared. Moment I crossed it, I might not want to go back. The fire from the Thing ministry still burned in my mind long after the smoke disappeared from orbit. We were back at Fulcrum's makeshift base, inside the righteous end, but nothing felt the same. Not the walls, not the halls, not the way people looked at me. I used to think the remnant had gone cold, too strategic, too logical, but Fulcrum wasn't cold, it was fevered, burning, and it didn't care who got caught in the flames. I sat in my bunk for hours replaying the mission footage. In my head, Rick snapping a guard's neck and laughing while she tossed a thermite charge into the records vault. The look on that woman's face as she took her kids and ran for their lives, never knowing if I was the exception or the next threat. I'd sent the signal to Mara. I knew she got it, but there was no reply, no rescue, no plan. I was alone inside the belly of a growing monster, and it was about to bite. Something bigger. Commander LRA called a meeting the next day. The entire Fulcrum War Council stood in the central chamber, 12 of them, faces shadowed by dim lighting and scarred by too many battles. LRA stepped forward, activating a hollow map of a densely populated planet, Harvin 9. Dominion core world. Military garrison. Civilian population in the millions. This, she said, is where it ends. A few people around the room murmured, some nodding, some clearly stunned. I stood near the back, pretending to be a loyal grunt, just another body in the war machine, but inside my guts twisted. Harvin wasn't a military base. It was a city, a hybrid colony, yes, with factories and training facilities. But it also held schools, hospitals, families, too many families. We strike their communications hub, LRA continued, cut off Dominion reinforcements across the inner belt. They'll be blind. We drop their fleet before it even gets out of dock. Someone asked, what about collateral? LRA didn't blink. Acceptable, another said. Innocence. She turned. Every innocent that lives under Dominion flag is a tool of their Regime, you want mercy, that's what got. Earth glass. That name Earth was still sacred too. Some of us, but not here. It was a reason to burn back twice as hard. I spoke up. There are over 9 million civilians on Harvin 9. LRA looked at me with the calm of someone who'd already killed that number in her mind, then let them run. If they stay, they've chosen a side. I clenched my jaw. Some of them are kids. Her voice dropped into a cold hum. Dominion kids grow up to be Dominion soldiers. You want to save them, Red. Save them from us, get them off world. Otherwise, don't get in the way. I didn't answer because there was no point. She'd already made up her mind. Later that night, RX found me in the weapons bay loading gear for the Harvin strike. You don't look ready, he said, tossing a crate onto the table. I'm not sure I ever am. He leaned against the bulkhead, arms crossed. You think this is too far? I didn't respond. You still think there's a line, he said. You think there's a difference between the ones who push the buttons and they ones who held the cables. I used to think that too. I met his eyes. So what changed? He smiled, tired. They killed my sister. She was 12, never held a weapon in her life. Dominion stormtroopers raided our district looking for rebels, found nothing. Didn't matter. They set fire to the entire housing block just to make a point. I'm sorry, I'm not, he said, because now I get to make my point. And this time they don't get to look away. I could hear it in his voice. This wasn't justice, it was vengeance with nothing left to lose, a machine that didn't care if it tore itself apart. Rix, I said quietly, how many people do we have to kill before we stop being the ones worth fighting for? He stared at me for a long time, then walked away. I returned to my bunk, closed the door, and activated the stolen commune hidden inside my boot casing. I keyed in the encryption Mara gave me, old remnant code. I sent a single word, Harvin. A few minutes passed, then a reply blinked on the screen. Location pinged. Stand by. I exhaled for the first time in weeks. I felt something close to hope, but it didn't last. A knock came at the door. Sharp, measured. I slid the comm away and opened it. LRA stood there. You sent a signal, she said. I froze. What are you talking about? Her eyes burned through me. You think we don't monitor unauthorized bursts? I reached for the blade on my hip. Slow, careful. If she moved, I'd strike first, but she didn't move. She smiled. Don't bother, she said. If I thought you were a traitor, you'd already be in the incinerator. I didn't relax. You sent a message, she continued, to the remnant tomorrow, probably to Rake. I don't care. Then why are you here? She stepped closer. Because I want you to see what comes next. I want you to witness the fire. And I want you to choose. Choose what? Who you really are. I didn't speak. She leaned in. Remnant wants to rebuild the galaxy. That's noble, but the bones are still rotting. You don't clean rot, you tear it out, burn it, and plant something new in the ashes. You're not building anything, I said. You're just making sure nothing stands. She smiled again. That's the first step of real freedom. Then she walked away. The day of the strike came fast, too vast. Fulcrum's fleet gathered near the Callan Drift. One jump from Harvin. I stood in the hangar, armored up, rifle in hand, helmet sealed, but inside my stomach churned. I didn't know if the remnant was coming. I didn't know if they even Had time, I only knew that if they didn't stop this, 9 million people would burn, most of them guilty only of being in the wrong place at the wrong time. And I'd be one of the men who helped do it, unless I chose to stop it myself. But how? I was one man inside a warship full of trained killers. If I moved too soon, I'd die. If I hesitated, they'd launch. I needed leverage, then I saw it. Payload controls for the orbital kinetic rods sitting unguarded near the munitions terminal, one access panel, one override key. If I triggered a premature launch into deep space, it would ruin the entire strike. No rods, no bombardment, no massacre. I had maybe 30 seconds to act. I walked slowly toward the panel, heart pounding. Then I heard her voice. You sure you want to do that? I turned, Mara standing there, no armor, just a jacket and a cold stare. How? You're not the only one who knows how to slip into a warship, she said. I followed your signal. You were right. This whole operation's wrong. They're going to wipe out a city. I know, she said, so help me stop it. I moved to the control panel. Mara stepped beside me, popped it open, and fed in a hardwired jammer. The lights on the console blinked, then died. Strike disabled, she said, but they'll notice. She nodded. Good, because when they do, we take the bridge. I stared at her. You came alone? I asked. She smiled. Not quite. Then across the hangar, shadows moved. Remnant operatives, 5 of them, armed, quiet, efficient. I couldn't believe it. You actually trusted me? Mara looked at me and said, not really. Then she loaded her weapon and added, but I was desperate. Bridge of the Fulcrum flagship wasn't built for comfort. It was built for control. Every surface was black steel, every interface sharpened to the edge of aggression. And at the center, Commander LRA stood like the queen of a broken empire, watching Harvan grow larger on the screen with every passing second. Around her, officers barked reports, target locks, trajectory angles, impact velocity, the final pieces of a massacre falling into place. She hadn't noticed we were there yet. Mara moved like liquid shadow across the deck, silenced, pistol drawn, her squad fanned out. Behind her, I followed close, heart slamming in my chest, not from fear but from the weight of what we were about to do. We had seconds before someone saw us, seconds before this room turned into a battlefield. And then Rix turned and locked eyes with me. I froze. He stood at one of the command terminals, watching our reflection in the glass screen. His gaze dropped to my rifle, then flicked to Mara, then back to me. He didn't shout, he didn't move, he just stared like he knew this was always coming. Then slowly, almost mournfully, he reached for his sidearm. Mara fired. First, the shot caught him in the shoulder, throwing him back against the console. He roared, not from pain but fury. One of the bridge crew dove for cover. The rest began to scramble. Chaos. I raised my weapon and fired a short burst into the air. Everyone down. This strike is over. A few dropped. Others didn't. LRA spun around, her face pale but steady. She looked at Mara, then at me, and something in her expression twisted. Not surprise, not even betrayal, disappointment. I thought you understood, Red. I leveled the rifle at her. I do. That's why I'm stopping you. You're protecting them. She hissed. Them after everything they did. I'm protecting who we used to be. I said before we started burning children and calling it strategy. She stepped forward slowly, her hands at her sides. They'll rise again, she said. They always do. The Dominion doesn't die, it furs. You don't cure an infection by sparing the blood, you drain it all of it. Mara barked into her comm. Payload control secure. Bombardment is disabled. We need a full lockdown on bridge access. Now, LRA's eyes never left mine. You think disabling the launch changes anything? You think this stops the war? All you've done is delay the pain. The remnant will lose the stomach for this. And when they do, the Dominion will crawl back, and next time they won't make the mistake of letting anyone survive. I lowered the rifle slightly, then we'll fight them again, but not like this. Her voice softened, dangerously calm. You were one of us, Tavan. You are. You still feel it. Don't lie to yourself. You liked the missions, the precision, the power. You liked knowing that when you struck, it meant something. She wasn't wrong, but she wasn't right either. Yeah, I said it meant something until it meant nothing. Then Mara stepped forward and hit her with the butt of her pistol. LRA dropped like stone. We secured the bridge. The rest of Fulcrum's fleet didn't respond. Not immediately. There was no unified command anymore. Not after LRA. Her voice was the glue, the rage, the soul of their crusade. With her unconscious in the strike canal, the splinter began to fracture. In real time, Mara's operatives swept the ship. We detained or disarmed key officers. Some fought, some didn't. Rick survived barely. He bled from the shoulder, restrained to med gurney. The infirmary. When I passed him, he didn't speak, didn't look at me, but I knew he would have killed me if he had the chance. Part of me didn't blame him. The war had taken everything from us over and over again, until the only thing we had left was the belief that maybe this pain would be worth it someday. But the way Fulcrum fought, it meant that even if we won, we'd already lost. Harvin 9 was spared. We sent a transmission, encrypted, anonymous warning of Fulcrum's planned strike. Dominion forces evacuated most of their surface facilities. A few stayed behind. But there was no fire from the sky. The people lived for now, and maybe they'd never know how close they came to being ash. Maybe that was for the best. We brought LRA to the warden under heavy guard. Rake met us on the hangar deck, flanked by 2 soldiers in full black armor. He didn't speak to her. He didn't look at her. He looked at me. You made the right call, he said. No, I replied. I made the only one I could live with. He nodded once. That was all. Later I asked Mara what would happen to LRA prison. If we're lucky, trial if the fleet needs a moral win. But more likely, quiet disappearance. She didn't answer. The Fulcrum fleet splintered after that. Some of the operatives joined the remnant. Some disappeared into deep space, taking their bitterness with them. Others weren't seen again. Rix was never transferred. Last I heard, he escaped during a shuttle reallocation near the Drosk belt. Some said he died in the void. I didn't believe it. He was too angry to die without taking someone with him. As for me, I stayed with the remnant. Not because I believed in their cause, at least not blindly, but because they were trying. They wanted to build something better, not just survive in the ruins of everything lost. They didn't always get it right, but at least they gave a damn. Mara and I never spoke much about the Harvin mission after that. Some things didn't need to be said. We understood each other now in a way that didn't require words. She saved me. Or maybe I saved her, maybe both. The war didn't end, not really. The Dominion didn't collapse, but it started to bleed slowly, steadily, piece by piece, and the stories about humans. They changed. We weren't just ghosts anymore. We were fire, flesh, vengeance, conscience. We were what came after. Silence, and when the next empire rose, when the next tyrant tried to force a boot over a system that had just started to breathe again, they'd remember what happened when humanity came back. They thought we were legends until our fleet arrived, and now they'd never forget.